Hey everybody, this is Carlos Ocelot, founder and CEO of G2 Esports, former professional gamer, and wonderful bodybuilder, as you may have known. Of course, you know me for that, pretty sure. And you're watching Dankan's channel. Thorin, my man. Enjoy.
Right, I'm here for a Talk to Thorin episode, and it's going to be here with LIDER, who is, I'm not sure if he's famous, infamous, but we'll find out in the interview. It depends what people know about him coming into it. And I'll tell people right at the top now, this is an example of an interview that I'm not doing just to ask questions about what the guy thinks or his career or whatever. I'm actually doing it for a specific reason, which is I think this is a player that actually has a lot of, like, I would say misinformation, like people who think things that maybe aren't accurate, and also just people aren't particularly educated on. And so let's start basically, which is, I famously, if people know, when I used to do the Elitist United show with Veteran, when we used to do that show, I knew obviously LEC. I watched the EULCS the whole time it was on, etc. But one of the interesting things we did a lot of episodes eventually that were about having people from the ERLs on, which I quite frankly didn't know anything about. I sort of knew some of the players, maybe if they were in what was the old Challenger and trying to get promoted in the EULCS when that was still a thing. But I didn't know anything about the ERLs, for example. So I actually had no clue myself how much talent there was there. There was all these players in all the major leagues. And basically, if you looked at whoever won the French league and the Spanish league and these German league, like these players all potentially were LEC quality. And it's just that they weren't in the teams. Like actually, this is one of the reasons we did these shows, was we were trying to promote who these people were. So you were one of the people who I remember we were trying to promote and we're trying to push forward, etc. And obviously you got your chance last year in the Misfits team, because if people remember, the Misfits spring team was the one where they tried to make the on-paper super team of all those big names. It didn't go well. Obviously, they didn't even make the playoffs. Then in the summer, they still had the same team, but when it was clear from the beginning, like they were having all the problems, what they initially did, and this is why I've specifically set it up like this, LIDER, is they didn't, as people will think from the end of the split, just bring in the whole Challenger team. You actually had one of the better Challenger teams, one of the teams that was in like EU Masters. I think you were top 4 or something. Or did you actually win it? I can't remember. How far did you guys go?
We won Spring.
Yeah, okay, sorry, my apologies then. Yeah, you actually won the EU Masters. So if people know now, in theory, if you even just show some skills in EU Masters, that's what's gotten people their LEC chances, their chances to come and play. So one of the details that I think is very interesting I want to start with is, you were just put into the LEC summer split, not with your team from EU Masters, and basically, from what I remember, I think it was you and Kire just thrown into some games with the other players that were from the main LEC team, like halfway through the split. So that must be, like, I know people want to see, like, right, is the player good or not? But that must be a very challenging circumstance to be thrown into a pro matchman, right?
Yeah, it was uncomfortable, to say the least. So,
and what was it like? Had you even practiced much with the main team? Like, did you ever play with that lineup of players? How did it come about that you got in?
I mean, we obviously did have some testing, but it was usually maximum 2 weeks, but usually like 1 week before putting in the player, and they would basically evaluate which player, which counterpart is doing the best and which one is fit, integrating themselves better or playing better individually, and they would putting in that way. At the start, they put in Kire for 1 or 2 games. He did really good first game, and I don't remember how the second game went, but it must have not been that good, because they put me in with Kire later on. But already from then, after they put in Kire and didn't let our team scrim, because we were actually doing really good in the ERL that we were playing in, which was French League, and then we were having a really good vibe. Like all 5 of us like started to play really well together. Obviously, we were already 4 players from the spring split, and we had Kire. We got Kire instead of Obsess, and Kire had a certain way of playing from Turkey. He was kind of trying to dictate everyone on the team, and it was a little bit uncomfortable at the start. But after he integrated in with us and started to trust his teammates more, then we just became a much better team, and I would say we're for sure LEC ready. But after they started putting in Kire for the main team, and we didn't really get good scrims with them, everything just became really uncomfortable. We lost our the ball with that we were like snowballing with improving over more and more. We just stagnated, and obviously putting in a jungler, which is a core member, I would say, for especially competitive, because this jungle role is more about communication, I would say, in the early game with all of your laners. And when you come from a communication as our team, where we had a special way of playing, I would say, we did not really follow the meta, mainly because of me. I was kind of new to competitive still. It was basically my first proper split in a elite team and under an elite org. So I was obviously still having issues with my champion pool. But yeah, in the end, like, it didn't turn out too well. I looked shaky. I would say I didn't play good. It just a fact. But that was, I would say, mainly because of all the miscommunication we had in game, and like I said, it comes from not playing for too long together.
Right, along those lines, then, this is obviously something we're going to dive into. And by the way, if anyone's watching this and you actually aren't a fan of LIDER, I'm going to ask him all the hard questions. Like, he can tell you what he thinks of these topics that everyone wants to talk about on Reddit, but maybe they know, maybe they don't know. So along those lines, right, when you came in, the story behind LIDER, even though you had actually won that, like, the EU Masters, etc., was like, oh, this guy basically just mains like Yasuo and Akali. Like, he's just going to play those. And if people remember, this was the split where, you know, people obviously were playing like AZIR and stuff like that. Like, the AZIR Corki was like still in the meta, TF. Like, you know, there was the champions pool at the time wasn't to play Yasuo mid lane in LEC. And you came in, and I think even your first game was like a Yasuo game, and that didn't go well. I think you fed that one. So people were like, see, they'll never make it here. But you had a game later, I remember, where you fucking super hard carried, you had like 12 kills or something. So, like, at the time, was it true that, like, you mainly were trying to just stick to those champions? Were those just the comfort? What was the logic behind why you played those?
I mean, like I mentioned before, I was still fairly new to competitive, and it is just the fact that I did not know how to play many champions. I started off as a Yasuo one trick, became a Yasuo, Ryze one trick, and played a lot of Katarina as well, but not really relevant to competitive play. And then all of these mini reworks were coming out, like Aurelia and Akali, and slowly but surely these champions were getting integrated into my pool. And then some champions that I already had from my pool, like the solo queue champions, like I said, was really strong, especially when I was playing EU Master. So it wasn't really it wasn't really easy to ban me out, because I was super comfortable playing on playing these champions and getting push or whatever it is. Like, always like in my comfort zone, playing well. And then later on, when you got into LEC, and I was still fairly new, we didn't really play much. First of all, our issue was, as a team, was getting us five play well together. Like I said, Kire coming in, his way of communicating with other core members of the team that was really vocal in the team. So we had to like tie this up and fix these issues. And I don't want to use that as an excuse to why I'm not playing these mages, but the reason why I did not play these mages was first of all because of my incompetence of not being able to pick up a champion really easily, and second of all because I didn't really want to risk losing us games. Because you can imagine my thought process. I get called up, like, you're gonna be playing, we're thinking of putting you in for this next weeks, and I'm like super excited, like thinking maybe I can turn this around, maybe we can even make it to playoffs, even though it was hard while we were rookies. So I just wanted to still keep playing my comfort, and I didn't really want to risk games, because I was a slow learner when it came to champions that I didn't really enjoy. So let's say, even though I really enjoyed playing AZIR, let's say AZIR was banned, then I would be able to pick up other champions I didn't enjoy. But that basically taught me, at least now, that I should, like, it just was a lesson for me. I should just always be ready to pick whatever champion I think is best in the situation, and have always something ready. But obviously I will still go back to this assassin type of champions. So yeah, the champion pool issue, for sure, my fault. But then again, it was just hard to start learning different style, from coming from split push, collapse, skirmish, this to slowly controlled, where to put down pink wards, how to play, how to rotate all this slow-paced macro game Korean style. So it was just we just couldn't risk it. That's
okay.
why.
Oh, by the way, I'll just point out, because I just looked it up now. I actually meant Aurelia was obviously the other one famous one you played. It wasn't Akali. Like, you do play that this year, though. Right? Along those lines, then, just to bring it back a second, this is where, like, you know that concept that all pro players know and kind of fear now, which is like Reddit narratives, that once an idea gets popular on Reddit, the problem is, because of the way Reddit works, like, when people see something else they agree with, they upvote it. And so basically, you can get this sort of group think where an idea might have some truth to it, but it's just been repeated so many times that a lot of people maybe never watched the player think they know all about the player. So one thing I'll say, I actually think unfortunately came from our show when we did Elites United and you were on it after you'd won the EU Masters, is because Veteran was trying to sort of be I would say almost like a big brother figure and trying to encourage the players who came from EU Masters to believe that, you know, he often like touted like rookies should be in the LEC. We shouldn't keep the old players who maybe aren't that good, but they have a big name, you know. One of the things he tried to do on this episode is because we talked about the fact that you were really good on these champions, Yasuo, Aurelia, etc. But at the time you didn't play the majors, and obviously that's like the classic meta that will always exist and we'll keep going back to at the pro player level. He tried to challenge you a little bit and sort of say like, but you could learn them, you know, you have the skills to do it. And the thing is, I think this is what stuck with people. On the show, maybe because you were, I don't know if you were just trying to shit talk or what, but you tried to, you gave kind of like a cocky answer where you kind of said like, well, I don't need to, you know, like I'll just sort of be so good at those champions, you know, I'll be able to play, it won't matter that I don't play the other ones, right? And I don't think people know, like, did you mean that? Do you only think that if you're so good on those ones you can? Is it like, what would you say to that? Because I do feel like that's something that stuck with people maybe.
To a certain extent, I still stick with what I said. Because I think in competitive play, if you're more comfortable on the champion that you're playing, then you should always play it, even though it's not the best situation for it. But if it's completely unplayable, there will be some drafts that it's going to be completely unplayable to play assassin style. Like let's say Schalke. Well, what Schalke did against us in my first game of LEC, I think it was really smart. They picked Skarner. They played tanks everywhere, basically. They picked Jacks, good into melees, and then obviously Akali, like people had the bad read on this champion, but it was really overpowered as well. I think I was winning lane though, so I'm happy proud of that I could control my lane. But then again, that was because I was so comfortable on this champion. So, and then they had Tam Kench and something else in ADC. So it was just hard to play the champion that I picked into that comp. And in situation like this, another champion will come out with that will be really good, like super good. Let's say I played, I don't know, like AZIR into that comp, for example, then it would be a much easier game to play from start to finish, just because I have to snowball, just because I don't have to really snowball from the early game. But my cocky answer, I'm still kind of sticking with it. But then again, I have grown as a player, I think. And I want to pick up these new champions, so I don't fuck over my team really, and don't make it hard for them to play the game. But all in all, I will. The cocky statement that I gave, it's like I would say it's half true and half false.
Right. There's a logic to it. Yeah, I get what you mean by that. Okay, so to go back in a second in the chronology of last year, the other thing I want to address is this. At the end of the year, I mean, if you remember, obviously the split ended where they just put the whole rookie team in when they realised that, like, you know, the old veterans weren't going to make it and you weren't going to make playoffs anyway, so screw it. You know, like, the idea was give these other players time and then, you know, we'll see, do we want them next year? Do we want some of them next year? Let's see, right? And so this is one area that I think there's a lot of confusion about. When the off-season came... Now, obviously, they didn't retain any of the players from the first line. Like, they all did go. In fact, most of them even went before the end of the split. But a lot of people thought, and I'd heard these rumours, well, they are, for example, keeping LIDER. Like, LIDER's staying as a mid laner. I think maybe one other. I know Dan obviously stayed. Like, they were keeping a couple of players, right? And so the story I heard went like this in the off-season last year. It was like they basically sort of told you, like, yeah, we're probably going to sign you, or maybe you even had a contract or something at the time. And it wasn't until basically right at the end of the off-season that you just found out one day, like, oh yeah, you're not going to be on the team next year, because obviously, like, if people saw, they came back with Pederson and they went a different route, right? Now, if what people might not know if they're fans is, like, the time we're recording this is actually the first day when people can sign players for this off-season, right? And what you'll see is in these first few days, most of the deals will all be done because people have already behind the scenes had the conversations and they kind of know where they want to go and who they want, and they have their short list. And so, actually, even though it's called this off-season, It's like the game. I don't know if you know this game, if they have it in Norway. It's called musical chairs that you play when you're a little kid. There's all these chairs laid out in the music. Yeah, the idea is there's not enough chairs for everyone. And so when the music stops, you have to run over and get your chair, otherwise you're out of the game. Yeah. So that's kind of what the off-season's like. Like, all the spots go really quickly. And famously, this actually happened to Odo Amne a few years ago. There was once a time where there was a rumour that he was going to join G2. And so a load of really good teams in LEC and LCS just didn't even bother approaching him because they thought, well, he's already gone. And it turned out they'd already signed players when he came and said, oh, that was just a rumour. Like, they'd already signed worse players, actually, and they even said, well, I would have signed you, but it wasn't available. So am I accurate here that you basically kind of like, when you were finally available to go to a different team, almost everyone was gone, or at least all the LEC spots were gone, right?
Yeah, I don't really remember when they told me like exactly that I was not going to play, but I do remember for a fact that I was promised that I was going to play. I even triple checked to be sure if I was going to be the starting mid laner for next year. And then they said there's no way that they see me not starting. That's what I got told word by word. And I didn't know. This was basically my first off season, so I didn't know like how off season really works. Right. But after experiencing this off season, I've understood that right after Worlds or even right after LEC, people that are allowed to explore options, the orgs will contact them already. Like the orgs that are at the Worlds, even if they're not in Worlds, they will start already contacting them and trying to make deals with them. And if they've heard from other sources that this player won't be available, this guy has a really crazy buyout, especially for rookies, and I was a rookie, and I think I had my not bad of a buyout. Like, it was shocked still when I heard what my buyout was. But in the end, like I said, the rumors and the feedback that the other orgs were getting was a large impact on that. But I don't really know. But I had one more year of contract on the team. Like, it was even a talk about extending my contract like a month back with the team once again. So it just came as a shock for me, that's for sure. So, and I would say it was late for LEC, but it was late for ERLs as well.
Because one thing that this leads to is when you then went back to the ERLs, you ended up going to mousesports and making this team, which, to be fair, had some players people will know, like obviously the bot laner people who've been in the LEC as well, Jeskla and these other players. So in this scenario, right, one of the things I noticed you alluded to at the end of the Twitlonger that you put out, where you announced in this offseason that you basically hadn't got an LEC spot, I asked you about this just before we began, is even though you joined a team with some good players, etc., you kind of just joined last minute even in that scenario, right? It wasn't like a team that like you sat down or no one really planned this team out, right? You just joined it, right?
Yeah. I mean, so basically what happened was like, I didn't know what to do because it seems like I didn't really get many offers from other ERLs as well. That's the most shocking part for me. Like, I didn't really get much contact, but then again, it's understandable because they probably signed their mid laner and already had plans for them. And it's good that they went with them. I don't want them to get backstabbed like basically the way I did. So it would be really hypocritical of me to join them then. But I joined Obsess. I'm a really good friend of Obsess, and I did enjoy playing with him as well with the time that I've been, and I think I improved quite a lot on when I played LEC and with the teammates I already had. And we basically just got a team that everyone seemed good and like average at best, let's say average at best. And then we got the bot lane that I had honestly no clue how they would be, but I know that I played against Jeskla and he seemed good. And I don't know about Promiscu because he was a sub for G2 and he didn't really play much competitive, so it was still a question mark for me. But this team, it was probably the most fun I've had in a team personally, even though it didn't succeed the way we wanted to. We didn't even win a single EU Masters, and it was just sad, but for a team that was basically on the fly, I am still happy, and the organization as well. Like, I'm really grateful to Mouse for picking me up on a whim.
As you say, and that was another issue I think happened this year with your story in terms of the Reddit narratives. In the same way as you got your hype in Season 9 from winning EU Masters, this year, because this is what's interesting about the way that the story always seems to work in LEC. The same fans and orgs that love the idea of rookies and trying out new talent, they also are addicted to that exact concept, because once they think they've already tried someone out, it's like they throw them away, and it's like getting a scratch ticket of lottery. It's like, right, I need another one. Like, let's check another one. Did I win? Oh, I didn't win. Right, another one. It's like they don't want to actually go back to the same person. So unless you basically come in LEC and immediately stomp everyone, like, I mean, not many players have ever done it, but I guess like Perks, or maybe you could say like Humanoid did it a little bit, you know, like, or Caps. Like, unless you come in and you're actually unbelievably good, people will just think like, I didn't make it, you know, it's whatever. Let's try the next guy. So one of the things I actually do think affected it is you probably had to try and win an EU Masters split again like that. You kind of need to get your name out there again and make people pay attention again. Like, do you think the fact that your team didn't, I mean, they still did decent results. You had top 8 at the first one, you had semis at the other one. Like, do you feel as though not winning was an issue in terms of making people take notice of LIDER again?
That's what I thought at the beginning, that me not even being able to win EU Masters this 2 years was the issues for me of not getting picked up. But it seemed like the main issue was all these rumors that was going around me that kind of impacted for the most teams. And honestly, people just thinking that I'm used up goods, basically, right? Like, I'll just use the term. Yeah. I'm used up goods. Like, people already know what I'm capable of, and everything. People are already like looking at me as I'm a veteran as well for some reason, when I haven't. I played less competitive than most people in the LEC or wherever, even in the ERLs. But yeah, I basically got the confirmation. It's not because you didn't win EU Masters. It's because there's so many question marks around you and so much risk.
Right, obviously, let's go to the whole champion pool issue, because in the same way as people know that you're famous for the AZIR, the Irelia, the thing that people obviously said was like, he doesn't play AZIR. And as I said last year, listen, yes, you always will have metas where like AZIR Corki will be the meta. But this year particularly, it was also probably the most extreme version, because for whole periods of this year, like, even some of the best players in the world who have played mid just played AZIR and Orianna, like the most boring fucking champs. So, right, people saw that as, that's just not in just LIDER, not like the champions, but they're just not in his wheelhouse. He can't play them. Now, I noticed when I looked it up and I saw a couple of games in EU Masters, you definitely did play AZIR. You certainly didn't spam it. Like, it's not like you played 20 games. I think you probably played like 6 or 7 games or something. So you played that. You're not really much of an Orianna player. What would you say if a fan says LIDER doesn't play AZIR and Orianna?
I would say it's the thing with AZIR and Orianna is it kind of, how do I put it? It will always be good because you have wave clear, which will let you scale basically, and you will have DPS, but it's not the most proactive picks, and that's just a fact. They don't have the kits to walk around the map early game and look for dives and everything, so they're kind of slow champs. And in my eyes, in National League, you can just pick honestly whatever you want to, and why wouldn't I just pick my comfort champions if it's in a good situation and everyone doesn't really know how to deal with it, you know? So that's my take on it. Obviously, I did have some AZIR games because it just was necessary to play AZIR in those situations, because even with all this mobility and everything, it just was impossible to play the champion if I didn't completely snowball the game from early game. So yeah.
To clarify, though, if you'd been in LEC, for example, last year, and you were in a team where the team comp which made sense, and it's at the LEC level, you would have done something different, right? You wouldn't have just picked a weird Echo matchup. You might have played AZIR or Orianna.
I most likely would have played AZIR. I love this champion, honestly. I think it's super fun. But like I said, it's just a completely different playstyle. Just a completely different playstyle from playing complete comfort all the team. Like, the whole team needs to adapt to it, and I need to adapt to it as well, because the communication going around is really differently. And so yeah, but AZIR for sure I would be playing. I wouldn't mind playing Corki. Like, I think Corki is fine as well. I played a game of Corki as well this year. I can play Lucian. I can first pick Lucian every game. But I would probably be more just spamming AZIR like Chovy did. Chovy didn't play a single game of Sinja in his whole career, it seems like, when I checked it up. Because I was thinking, because Sinja was the most OP champion in the game this season, and that's just a fact. But I had counter picks to it, and sometimes I guess let's say against Rogue, we for sure should have banned Syndra in first split because it was just too OP. Honestly, like I said, it just makes someone. It kind of hides weaknesses, I would say. Like it's not a skill matchup suddenly, and the champion was just unbelievably overpowered. So yeah, but I would love to play Azir, honestly, in LEC if it was good.
Now, one thing I will say is, even though, listen, yes, you're still not famous as like a mage player, etc. What people might not know is, it's not that you only play Yasuo and Aurelia, like you actually play tons of the other ones that, so, funnily enough, are kind of only like rare picks for other people. Like, obviously you had the Akali, but I would say Echo, you played a bazillion games of that in pro play. That's like usually a niche pick only for the counter in lane. Like a lot of people don't pick that primarily. You obviously were playing that a lot. Silas, you obviously played all the time pretty much last year. Like, what would you say overall? Like, how would you define like what your champion pool was for last year or this year rather? I mean,
my champion pool does consist mostly of melee champions, but I think that the thing with my champion pool is mostly that it allows for proactive play and skirmishing. So I would generalize my champion pool as that, just skirmishing, allowance for skirmishing early anything. But apparently the narrative says if I can't play Syndra or Rihanna, I don't have a champion pool. But I would say I have a bigger champion pool than anyone else just because I play these niche champions. I can play most top lane champions, honestly, in mid lane, and I won't have a problem playing in mid lane. And then I play some mid laners as well, like the assassins, and I have a couple mages in there, like more specifically one, and a little bit of Corki. So what else was there? I'm flexible in one sense, and I'm unflexible in another, I would say, if that makes sense.
maybe I can tie it back into what you said earlier, because I think you could expand on that. When you said that if you had been in LEC, yes, you know, if it made sense, you would play AZIR. If you have the right team, you would. Obviously, I mean, actually, that was a difference I would say that was noticeable between LEC and ERL, which is in LEC summer, for example, there was periods where scaling was really good. Like people were just, like famously Rogue, the joke was they pick AZIR and they just do nothing for 25 minutes and they win the game. Like they just, you know, like at that point in time, they don't have to be super proactive. Like Larson was some people's MVP. But when you say at the ERL level, you were picking all these different champions, being flexible, etc. That's specific to ERL, right? Like the logic is, if you're playing against the worst mid laner, and obviously there's some good mid laners there, but they're not all the LEC quality. The idea is, if you have your Echo or your Silas or something, and particularly in certain matchups they might not play, you're just going to stomp the game, right? You're just going to smash them early. You're not going to have to play a scaling comp. You're not going to have to play like more macro League of Legends, right?
Yeah. The way I look, let's take the Rogue example with the AZIR. Rogue would just first pick the champion, right? They would just first pick AZIR, sure. And then they would just play on the champion's strengths, basically, and then just build a team comp around it, and then just play the game based on that. But let's say another champion was even more OP. I actually think Silas was in a really good spot in the meta. Last spring. That's why I'm spamming this champion. You know, I always spam a champion that I think is really good. And then that champion just has a certain way of playing as well. So the whole team needs to basically play around it. Let's say I pick Silas, then obviously enemy needs to have decent ultimates that you think they will pick, and then you need some engage and then some skirmishing power, and then you play that way. I think this season especially has been really flexible with what you can play, honestly. Like Rogue having success with just scaling, G2 having success with just skirmishing, and then other teams as well. They're just a mix of these two. So honestly, I think it just depends on how strong the champions are, like what state the champions are in. That's what I think.
Right, obviously, when I ask you this following question, there's a risk that this might make people not like you. But I just want to ask you, I want to get your sense, because whenever I've talked to you and seen you in interviews, you seem a very confident guy. So, bearing in mind these champions you're playing, like these are the champions that people play when they want to stomp the opponent. Like, are you a very confident guy? Do you think you're really skilled?
I think I'm skilled enough in what I do. Like, I think I'm good enough to play these champions and do my job on it, which is stomp in some sense, I guess, and play the fights good in skirmishes. And yeah, to a certain extent, I would call myself skilled, yeah.
One thing I have to ask is this, right? There's a perception, cause maybe people think you're cocky from the past or things you've maybe said. Here's what I want to ask is, if you're in solo queue, I mean, you do it on Twitter, like you often post like pictures where it's like shit talk of people in the text and stuff, or you do the classic one that every US challenger player does, where you post a picture of the guy who fucking ints the game away on your team, you know, and you're carrying or whatever. Like, would people who've already played you in the game, would they think you're toxic? Do you think you've got some rep in that sense?
What do you mean, from a team environment perspective or in a solo queue environment?
I mean, like in solo queue, do people think you're toxic, and therefore do they think? I mean, I know this happened to Jizuki. Do people therefore think like, we wouldn't want this guy in a pro team because maybe he's, you know, maybe he's too arrogant or too cocky or whatever? What do you think?
I think people think I'm a complete psychopath in solo queue. Like, I'm gonna be honest, and while I do regret being this toxic, and there's just nothing to justify, it's just really frustrating, I would say. Solo queue has just been really frustrating this year because there's a lot of inflated people that should be in lower ranks but are in higher ranks, and I just get mind blown basically. Obviously, it's not good, and I got banned for this as well, just for solo queue toxicity for 2 games from competitive. Yeah, but I do regret it, obviously. But sometimes it's just all fun in games, honestly, just poking fun at someone, you know,
Right.
just for banter. And let's say I have a friend in enemy team, I will just start like flaming him for fun, you know, like just to trigger him or something.
Right.
But that's obviously banter between me and him.
Sure.
And the people in the game might not understand this and actually think I'm toxic or something, you know, because usually I'm the one that starts this just for fun. So, but yeah, I think the teams that I get in solo queue would say I'm pretty toxic, but I'm always hungry to win, so I make up for it.
Since you and Larson were both kind of coming up in the EU Masters ERL level at a similar time, and then obviously he's had now some pretty decent success. He went to Worlds. Is it frustrating to see people who are kind of in your peer group? Like, I mean, in theory, you guys should be battling the LEC, a lot of people would say. So is it tough to see them having their successes and you're still trying to figure out how to get back in LEC?
I'm going to be completely honest. Obviously, it is super, super frustrating to see, because a couple of years back we were playing against each other and we were on the same level, I would say, and I was beating him and he was beating me. Sometimes it just and at one point I thought I was better than him, and then he played competitive. He just had more time to improve, and that's what really frustrated me, that he could improve faster than me because he's playing against better players than me. Not that he was in the LEC, but
Right.
that he can just get ahead of me.
What happened in this off-season then? What can you say? I mean, it obviously isn't over yet, but the way you posted that tweet longer made it sound like you've maybe talked to some people or you didn't get the offers you wanted, and it's looking now like it's going to be ERLs again, isn't it? So can you give us some thoughts? Like, what were you surprised that was there just a lack of offers? Were people giving you offers but they were rubbish ones? What was the situation?
I did have a couple of offers, and I honestly was expecting the offers from teams that I got the offers from. But it just, I don't know, like, even if they revoked the offers, 2 of the teams, like, if I honestly would even join them, because I want to be on a team to improve. Like, even if it's ERL, if I can play with teammates that I actually think are good enough for LEC, but they're stuck with me in the same situation as me, then that's fine with me. Honestly, I can play scrim against LEC teams and improve. And honestly, all I want to do now is improve and then make it to Worlds and just be the world's best. But the difference in situations now is I kind of have control of what I can do, because my off season started before the official off season, compared to last time where I just got promised and then and then the promise wasn't held. So this time I could basically pick my players, and players that I'm really confident in and have my trust in.
So, okay, then based on that, is it reasonable to say in this next EU Masters and the next ERLs, we should see the best of LIDER? We should see the guy who should be in the LEC?
I think I would bet on it. I'm not going to guarantee anything because anything can happen, but I would say this will probably be the team that I can showcase myself as a player the best.
Okay. Tusen tack.
Tusen tack.
This video was kindly supported by Pronogo, Mohammed, Alabdul, Razzaq, Dean Tanglis, James Pederson, VatriSam, ErikHillestad, Andreas Kroknes, Hades, Zoomba Gaming, JDubs, Tobias Bernasconi, and Alexander Rao. Special thanks, as always, goes out to Jerky's Minion. Would you like to suggest a topic or a guest for one of my upcoming episodes? Maybe you want to ask more of those questions in that video AMA I do each month. Do you want teasers? Find out who the next guests are for my shows. Well, maybe you even want to take part in one of those crazy donated discussions where we go all over the place. If any of these perks appeal to you, or you want to support the channel, put your money where your mouth is and join the Skrilluminati today at the Patreon link in the description box below.